morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where of course all eyes are on Rogue One's box office now that it has officially hit the United States. And last night, the headline came in very quickly because of course this is important as to what its Thursday night haul was, and it was 29 million. Which is actually pretty darn good. Now, it's nowhere near The Force Awakens, which pulled in 57 million in its Thursday night showings. Ever since the tragic shooting with the Dark Knight Rises, they've now done earlier Thursday showings. It used to just be midnight showings, but now they start as early sometimes as 6 or 7 o'clock. So now you can get quite a big number of Thursday night previews. It's become a whole thing. Like the really big fans head out Thursday night. In fact, I saw an ad for Rogue One. I saw it again actually last night. I was so excited, so I saw the press screening, and then I was there opening night, and then I went home and watched Big Bang Theory. Great episode. That show's coming back a little bit. But anyway, they had an ad playing during it, and they were like, Rogue One, playing in theaters tonight. Be one of the first to see it. And I was like, way to play into the fandom there. But anyway, so 29 to 57, so it's not as good as The Force Awakens, but it's the best of the year, actually. Civil War opened with, for some perspective, Civil War opened with 25 million for its Thursday night showing, Batman v Superman 27.7, Suicide Squad 20, and then Jurassic World actually 18.5. So as you can see, the Thursday night opening isn't indicative of what the final tally for the weekend will be necessarily, because Civil War and Batman v Superman went on to have huge opening weekends, which are going to probably be bigger than Rogue One's, because it was downgraded actually on Thursday night. Talk about that in a moment. But also Jurassic World only at 18.5 Thursday night, but yet one of the biggest openings of all time. I think that it also speaks to the type of fan base you're dealing with. I think people who are into Jurassic World, not gotta go and see it as soon as it hits theaters. But when you have these comic book genre films, and I think Star Wars is definitely going into that realm, and someone could argue was one of the very first, of course everybody wants to be there right away, not only to be part of the experience, but to avoid those spoilers, right? All right, so they adjusted their predictions for the Rogue One opening weekend. It was originally pegged at about 150. Last night, deadline adjusted to 140, which would make it still the third biggest opening of the year behind Civil War and Batman v Superman, but it's right in the mix there. If it dips into the 130s, which it could if it's pegged at 140, it's going to be competing with Finding Dory, Suicide Squad, and Deadpool, which are all right there in the 130 range. So we'll see where Rogue One lands. But I have to say, I know that not every movie can be The Force Awakens, but if I were Disney, I'd be like, the honeymoon couldn't last a little longer. Maybe it's a spin-off versus an episode, right? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe episode 8 will go back to being huge. Although, I don't know. We'll see. Because I think the reaction to The Force Awakens, the delayed reaction to some degree, because I think a lot of people at first were like, I'm liking The Force Awakens no matter what. But I've definitely seen a little bit of a pivot on the public opinion of that movie. So I don't know how that's going to affect episode 8. I do think it affected Rogue One. But anyway, I would think that, you'd like Star Wars to still be a little bit ahead of the crowd, right? A little bit, have a little bit of a boost and not quite be so in the mix of things, right? Already competing with the comic book properties and the animated films. I'd be like, not 2 years of slam dunk wins. But anyway, still 140 is a good number, would be very good for December. So what do I think is hurting the Rogue One box office? Well, we'll see what happens. There's also some numbers we're going to discuss in a moment. I got some facts to back it up, and it's just generally weaker than The Force Awakens. Now, of course, there's everybody was waiting for Star Wars to come back and to come back right, because a lot of people dislike the prequels. I know some people like them, but I think, overall, not a great response. So there was if people have been saying a pent-up excitement for The Force Awakens, which has already been spent. But I also think that the feminism angle and Kathleen Kennedy's comments have not helped. I think that the ad campaign was too Jyn Erso-centric, especially when the movie itself is not Jyn Erso-centric. For instance, in that ad on Big Bang Theory, they played up, the Katniss style shot of Jyn Erso, and I was like, that's not even in the movie. And no spoilers, though. I'm not going to give anything away. But that's not even in the movie. And it's not really about her. And the other characters are so awesome. I think that the movie ad campaign did itself a disservice not playing up the entire cast. Random. You never know what cast member you're going to get spotlighted in an ad. That would have been, I think, not only ideal, but also reflective of the way the movie turned out. But they were reworking this since the last minute. Then also, I think The Force Awakens has affected it. Some people, I've seen a number of you say to me, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But then also, I'd be curious to see how politics are influencing this. Dump Star Wars was trending for quite a bit. Like last week, I think, or early this week, it trended like overnight, basically. It was weird. But I don't know if that's having an effect as well. We'll see. It trended, speaking of Twitter, it did trend, like I was thinking about it. I was so excited. I had such a good time. So I was up very late, and I saw it trending, I guess, from Europe, where it's also playing, obviously. Because of the time difference, I think maybe that was prime European tweeting time. But it's not trending so far today in the United States. Maybe tonight when everybody starts going, the majority of people start going this evening. But I hope there's a slow burn as people slowly realize that it is an excellent movie. But these numbers are just not as strong, which is unfortunate. I'm not quite sure what's going on because it's such a spectacular movie. But these are the numbers so far. The Force Awakens had an 88% recommendation rate. That means when they polled people coming out of the theater and they said, would you recommend this movie to someone else? For The Force Awakens, 88% of the people said yes. It's 77 for Rogue One. Then also, interestingly, more women showed up. 38% of the audience was women this time, as opposed to 29% with The Force Awakens, which I guess maybe they had a misdirect. They keep misdirecting with the ad campaign. They thought, they made it seem like it was all about John Boyega's Finn for The Force Awakens, so I guess not a lot of women showed up there, but then they made it seem like it was all about Jyn Erso this time around, so women did show up, but then it wasn't, right? So the result is actually that more men liked it than women. I mean, women didn't overwhelmingly dislike it, but you have a 94% like rating from guys, whereas it's only 79% with women. So maybe they were like, Jyn Erso wasn't the star of this movie, what the hell? But it was such a good movie. I mean, what really upset you I don't know. I was like, thank God she's not the lead of the movie. But I guess because I had major problems with the way she was depicted in the ad campaign. But, who knows what's going on there. Women not liking Star Wars doesn't make us look too good when we're trying to argue for more women characters in these things and merchandise for women. I mean, numbers like this don't help. And also, Kathleen Kennedy should keep this in mind when she's saying she doesn't owe male fans anything. I'd be like, you sure do when it comes to your recommendation rating and your like rating. And who's going to be seeing this on a repeat loop, right? Although, as a female audience member, I've already gone twice, and I do plan to go again. All right, so anyway, let's go on to that's the first story of the day. I'm curious, what do you think of the Rogue One box office so far? What's your thoughts on how it's shaping up? And what do you think of it in comparison to The Force Awakens? And what do you think might be the problem here? I've given you a couple to choose from. All right, so the second story of the day is about another movie that's having a big problem. That's Passengers. Passengers. I actually couldn't make the press screening on Wednesday, and who knew that it would become a huge news story when everybody said that it was a horrible movie when the reviews hit on Thursday. But here's what's interesting to me. All the reviewers seemed really shocked at the surprise twist of the movie that we've all known for months, because that's how they promoted the film when they were doing the salary negotiations. So I think the biggest reveal of the Passenger reviews is that movie critics, for the most part, don't follow movie news, which is really weird, right? Why wouldn't you want to know what's going on in the industry that you're covering? Very odd. All right, so they were shocked about what happens in Passengers. And some of you might not be aware. To discuss spoilers or not. If you don't want to know what happens in Passengers, skip ahead right now. As always, there are chapter times down below in the video description, so you can skip right ahead to the third story. And I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Okay? All right. So anyway, in Passengers, as we all know, Jennifer Lawrence's character is woken up intentionally by Chris Pratt because he doesn't want to be alone on the ship anymore. And, it's not cool. And I even said in my coverage of the film, I don't know how she could ever get over that, right? Although they've created apparently a very unlikable character with Jennifer Lawrence, where she's not really traveling with any family. She's already said to her family, ta-ta, she's apparently going to write a book about, this new settlement, and then she's going to come back. I'd be like, it's so many years. It's like, what, like a 120-year trip both ways? Like, what do you know people are going to be interested in reading by the time you go there and come back? It seems like a really weird business plan to me. But anyway, they made her one of those Sex and the City type ladies who'd already decided to leave behind everybody she knew. So I guess it wasn't quite as bad. Like her family wasn't in the pods next to her, and he was like, wake up the in-laws? I don't think so. Maybe if they'd gone for those kind of jokes. I don't know. But, some people compared it to like boxing Helena in space, the kind of comparisons you don't want for your movie. And saying that even Chris Pratt couldn't make such a guy likable. And so they were triggered. I also knew they'd be triggered, movie critics, because as we also discussed, the idea that of everyone who could wake up on the ship, he would wake up a young blonde white woman, right, because he was physically attracted to her, would really not sit well with, the type of person who reviews movies overall, right? Like, I was like, they were going to be like, what? So, like, and also just for sex, and like not who would be a good conversationalist, I don't know. It's like, it's really hard to just, it's bad. It's a bad situation, and I think it should have been really clear to Sony. Man, Sony, what's going on over there, right? They're like, should we still do Amy Schumer Barbie? Should we go for a trinity of bad decisions? And they're like, yes. Okay, so anyway, it'll be the Sony box set. All right, so I just have a giant, Rotten Tomato symbol on it. All right, the green splosh tomato. So anyway, the other problem, I think, it's not great for Chris Pratt to have a bad movie. I think it tarnishes him because he's been like really solid so far. It's like everything Chris Pratt does is touches to gold, and now he's got, it looks like a giant floating piece of crap in space headed his way, all right? But I think the worst thing, the person this looks worse for is Jennifer Lawrence. She's got haters in the wings. I go back and forth in Jennifer Lawrence. Every time, this Hawaiian story she told about itching her butt, catching fire on sacred Hawaiian stones was just really despicable. Even Chris Pratt was like, oh God, this is so bad. I feel bad that I'm sitting next to you while you tell this story on the Graham Norton show. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link down below in the video description. But it's just really bad. And so every time you're like, maybe I'm being too hard on Jennifer Lawrence. She just says something that you're like, you're kind of like a horrible person a little bit. So anyway, I think that this is because people are really easy jab to say it's a money grab, and I even saw some reviews saying, this kind of role, because it's just the girlfriend role, the whole movie's told from Chris Pratt's perspective apparently, is beneath an actress of Jennifer Lawrence's caliber. And Jennifer Lawrence clearly said, the paycheck isn't beneath me. It's a huge paycheck. Again, it's $20 million up front, like 30% of the profits of the movie. Although apparently now the joke's on her, there might not be any profits, but it's just really bad. And so it makes her look, I think before she was fighting for like, equal pay, and I'm a movie star and I should get paid what I'm worth. But now it looks like it's just like, it just looks like money grubbing, and I think that's really bad. All right, so that's the second story of the day. Now, the third story of the day is a story that gave people a lot of concern, and that's that the Bleeding Cool put out a story saying that Megan Fox is, the Bleeding Cool wording was, I think, vague, perhaps intentionally so, but all they really reported, as some of you pointed out, was we discussed this on Twitter, that Megan Fox only purchased comics featuring Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. That's all that's happened. Now, I know, and a lot of people jump to a conclusion saying she must be up for the role. Here's the thing. A lot of times people will buy comics to prepare for a role once they've been cast. But they'll also buy comics if they want to get a role and they want to say, hey, look, I know my stuff. So I think that's what's happening. I think Megan Fox would like to be Poison Ivy. Who wouldn't like to be Poison Ivy after what Harley Quinn did for Margot Robbie's career? I think every actress in Hollywood should be making a beeline for Golden Apple Comics in Los Angeles. That's the big comic book store in Los Angeles. Although also you can just order them up on Comixology. So I think that's what's happening. And I think Megan Fox, I have to be honest, I think that she like back in the day before her Michael Bay's Hitler comment, not a good idea, she would have been probably up for the role of Harley Quinn. And, I think she perfectly fits with how David Ayer views women. So I think that Megan Fox is not stupid for thinking that she could have a chance to play Poison Ivy, or maybe even Catwoman. I think she's wrong to go after Poison Ivy. I think it's her ego wanting to be like the sexy character. I think she looks more like Selena Kyle if she was going to be anyone. So that's who she really should be pushing for. Megan Fox is an okay actress. I thought she was all right in the first Turtles movie, not so great in the second one. But I wouldn't want her anywhere near my Gotham City Sirens movie. And now again, I think David Ayer might be into it because David Ayer, I think, his view of women is kind of really horrible. And Megan Fox perfectly fits that viewpoint. So he might be like, oh my God, Megan Fox and Margot Robbie? Yes, please. But I think that I hope Margot Robbie isn't stupid enough to go along with it. I think she should be really polite and be like, no, I think we should go for someone else, because I think that Megan Fox's box office numbers aren't so strong. That's what I would go with. But I think that if they cast Megan Fox, that's going to make Margot Robbie look like, instead of Michelle Pfeiffer from Catwoman, as Catwoman in Batman Returns, she's suddenly going to turn into a Megan Fox equivalent. And, that's really bad. Margot Robbie's supposed to, have a higher caliber, in terms of talent and reputation. And so I would not want to stand anywhere near Megan Fox. I think that would be a horrible, horrible idea. So I think that the rumor is just that Megan Fox would like to be Poison Ivy. I don't blame Megan Fox for wanting it. I think she has a chance. And I think that David Ayer and Warner Brothers potentially are stupid enough to hire her. But I'm hoping that Margot Robbie is not. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day, and I have a very good question from Brain Food, aka Matthew Francis. So Matthew says, hello Grace, I love your channel so much. I always enjoy grabbing a snack and watching your videos after work. Aw, I hope you're enjoying a good snack today. I watch every single day. That means so much. So Matthew says, my question is, and I'm glad you asked this, Matthew, because this is an important question. And I think you have not good advice from other people. So Matthew says, if a young amateur filmmaker or writer is interested in creating television series or films one day, do they have to graduate from a film school to make the necessary connections? Or is doing small short films, submitting quality screenplays to studios enough to be noticed? Thanks, Matthew Francis. I'm really glad you asked this, Matthew. Studios do not take submissions of any kind. You cannot submit to a studio unless it's through one of their hiring programs looking for new talent. And often I don't know what your background is, Matthew, but they're usually looking for diversity hires in those situations. So you cannot submit to a studio. This isn't like the studio system in the old days when they had people on staff within the studio, and so you could submit, but it's a mixed bag. Then also you had like a set salary. You weren't really, you had a steady gig, but you didn't really get like the pay you maybe deserved. Both the studio system and the current free agent system have their pluses and minuses. Although being hooked on drugs for actors was definitely a minus with the studio system days. But anyway, if you want to be a filmmaker or a writer, you cannot submit to the studios under any circumstances. They will not even open your script. So do not think that that is an option. Now, you don't have to go to film school, but it would certainly help because you would know the business better. I would really recommend that you at least minor in what you're interested in doing at the college that you attend. And make sure you don't get taken in by some of these schools that pretend that they're going to help you learn this stuff and that they have connections, but they're just ways for people to make money. That's really bad. And also, you should never pay to meet an industry individual. That's not appropriate, and that's usually a cash grab. All right? And also, sometimes in the industry, they're actually starting to crack down on that a little bit because it's so egregious. So what you need to do is you would need to get an agent or a manager to submit you for these things, all right? Or you'd have to do well in the festival circuit, and there also you kind of need an agent or a manager to help you out there a little bit. So if you want to be a screenwriter, you should be always writing screenplays. The more you write, the better. You'll just get better over time. You should be reading as many screenplays as you can as well. And then you should submit to things like the Blacklist. You should be submitting to writing programs. You should be just really working hard to see what's out there. And you want, if you get accepted to a couple of programs or you make a couple top 10 lists, then you'll be able to get an agent or a manager. Also, you can, if you're a filmmaker, when you want to go to festivals, you want to try and get your films there, and then if they do well in the festival, then you can also get an agent or a manager. I would recommend, there are so many different routes into the industry because there is no set way for people to enter, that you should really see who you like, who's on their way up, but has a foothold in the industry, and see what their path was, see where their film played, see what their education was, see what their experience was, see how they got, the backing. Like Nate Parker, for instance, took like 2 years of his life off from his career to raise the money he needed for The Birth of a Nation. And then he still screwed it up at the end. Oh, that's just really disappointing. But he was doing everything right until the last minute. So really and by that I mean, I think he should have taken that Oprah special to help, settle everything. So that's what you really need to be trying to get an agent or a manager, because for legal reasons, the studios really won't accept anything from you otherwise. And also, you don't really submit to studios anymore. You have to submit to production companies because they're the ones who make the movies, and then the studios distribute them. So that's another thing to remember. Warner Brothers doesn't, they make very few movies themselves. Sometimes they're big budget like Harry Potter and stuff like that, but you're never going to be starting there. You're going to be starting with small films, and then, look at who gets hired. Ryan Coogler's making Black Panther today, but he had to go Fruitvale Station, then he had to go Creed, And then, now he's finally got off of that. He got Creed by making a personal appeal to Sylvester Stallone and getting Sylvester Stallone to do a sequel to that. So, and that was like a very smart, clever thing to do. And also picking Rocky was smart because even the original Rocky was a really strong awards contender. So, and also he's lucky that David Duvernay said no. So, it's crazy business. So, as far as you don't go, going to film school does help. It does help you make connections. It helps you understand the business, to be realistic, and teach you the craft, which is important, even when it comes to screenwriting. But if you don't want to go to film school, if it's not something that's feasible, then I would, buy the books that you need to online to learn about what you're interested in doing. And again, just submit, do the groundwork. And also, you can always enter the industry through a side route. You can go and you can work in public relations. You can work as an assistant to somebody and learn it that way. You can go just anything and make connections, and then you can try and shift once you're in the industry. I won't lie to you, it's very hard to shift once you're established in a certain role because they're like, you're so good there, why should you move? So it's tough to do, but it has been done. Ava DuVernay, for instance, started out publicizing films to black audiences, but that, she wanted to make films for black audiences primarily, at least starting out, and so she had the connections to help her film when she made one. So that was very smart. So you should always be thinking a couple of steps ahead, but you got to be wily, you got to be tricky, and do your research, both in terms of your craft and the business. All right, I hope that's helpful, Matthew. I know it's not the answer that you would like to hear, or that anyone would like to hear, because it's much harder than I know everybody would hope, but that's the game. It's a very risky profession, and it's just a fact. That's just a basic fact of working in the entertainment industry. It's tough. All right, so good luck to everyone. Good luck to you, Matthew. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Please write down below you think today's top 3 stories, Matthew's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered on Monday, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.